In this episode, we speak with the co-founder and CEO of Armada, Dan Wright. Armada is the world's first full-stack edge computing platform, revolutionizing connectivity, compute, and AI solutions. Armada enables companies to rapidly deploy, operate, and monitor a complete modular data center to the remote corners of the world. Before Armada, Dan was the CEO of DataRobot and COO of AppDynamics. He is invested in the future of technology as an investor, advisor, and board member for various visionary startups, including Abnormal Security, Avi Networks acquired by VMware, and Embrace. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
It's great to see you. Thanks very much for having me.
So you've progressed in your career, rising through the ranks in tech companies, well-known tech companies, and it culminates in now, I think, your founding and CEO position with Armada. Maybe what we could do to kick off is just tell us a little bit about Armada.
Yeah, absolutely. So Armada has a mission to bridge the digital divide. And the sort of background on the company is that we were looking at the fact that Starlink is bringing connectivity to lots of austere remote locations around the globe, like oil rigs in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico and mines in the middle of the Amazon or Africa and battlefields in the middle of the Pacific Theater, and realizing that the rest of the sort of compute infrastructure hasn't caught up yet. It's still back where it was 20 years ago, where all the data was in major metro hubs, but now all of the data is flowing to the edge and being generated at the edge as cameras and sensors and drones have gone down in price, and people are now deploying those technologies at scale in these remote environments. And so what we've done is we've brought the rest of the infrastructure, we've completed the rest of the stack at the edge with the world's first full stack computing platform. And we have modular data centers that we call galleons, and they're highly ruggedized. They come in multiple sizes depending on how many racks of compute you need. And then we can deploy them sort of as needed in these remote environments. And then we manage them all centrally through our operating system, which we call Commander. So that's what we do.
So I imagine there's quite a bit of analysis to determine where to put each of your units. How are they distributed currently throughout the US or globally?
So today we're in the US, and one reason for that is that we're still a fairly young company. So we were incorporated in late 2022. We spent the first year of the company in stealth, and then we launched in December. In that year that we were in stealth, we stood up the ability to continuously manufacture these as needed. And so now what we're doing is we're standing up customers and partnerships around the globe, and we're starting to deliver these globally. And we have a manufacturing capability that's allowed us to have many more of these coming soon, and they'll be distributed to different parts of the world, ranging from the US to the Middle East to, we're anticipating even, Africa and Asia Pacific. And the end goal is to just meet customers wherever they're at. And again, bring the compute to their data so that they can create value from that data in real time.
And who would be the customers? Are these enterprises or are these individuals, or is it the networks?
Yeah, good question. We are working with mainly enterprises, and that typically is industrials. So major oil and gas companies, large mining companies, manufacturing companies, and then logistics companies like railroads and maritime companies. And also we work in the public sector with state and local governments and national governments. And then ports are also like a very interesting use case. Anything that's involving large amounts of data being generated in a mainly a remote location where you're trying to run real-time analytics and AI on that data, that's a potential customer for us.
And the area of AI is something you're very familiar with. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. In one way, shape, or form, I've now worked with AI in 3 different technology companies. So this is my third. The first one was AI for IT, is one way of thinking about it, but it was application performance management company called AppDynamics. And I joined that company right as it was coming out of stealth mode. So they built the product, onboarded a few customers, and then we really scaled that company. And then we were going to go public in 2017, and then Cisco ended up buying us 2 days before the IPO for a good result. But it was definitely a hard left because we were ready to go public, and then ended up going to Cisco. But really, really cool to see that technology is now all over the world. I stayed at Cisco for 2 years as part of that acquisition. And then I went on to DataRobot, another AI company, but that AI company was very focused on democratizing AI and making it accessible for people who are not data scientists, people like business analysts. And, a lot of those use cases are focused on customer support, focused on automating back office tasks. And I'd say largely up until recently, that's the main state of play in AI has been automating customer support, automating some back office tasks, and then, things for consumers like ChatGPT helping you to do things like write a nice poem for your wife or whatever you're trying to do. And then, what really kind of fascinated me as I was at DataRobot was this phenomenon of all the data going to the edge. And what I realized is that there's this massive need to process that data at the edge because you can't do anything with AI if you have latency. And the only way to solve the latency problem when you're dealing with these remote environments is to establish like a new edge. Like when we launched, we talked about welcome to the new edge. And what that means is we're bringing the compute stack to that data to enable AI in operations. And I think that's the next thing is going to be something that changes entire industries is AI, but on the ground in operations. And then in the public sector, I think it's super timely given what's going on as well, because you have all of these conflicts and a lot of them are in remote, sometimes hostile environments. You're going to need to be able to process a lot of data from drones, from autonomous vehicles, from different types of repeaters in these remote environments. And so it's kind of purpose built for that as well.
So I guess the rugged and kind of robust, encasing or container is imperative, right? Because someone would think like, let's knock this thing out. For security purposes, you kind of design it specifically, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that our technical team is like incredible. And my CTO, Pradeep Nair, he was described to me when we were first getting to know each other as the best person in the world technically to solve the problem we're trying to solve, because he's built for massive scale. He was one of the key people that helped build Azure for over a decade at Microsoft. He used to run GovCloud as well as their expansion into new regions and a lot of the top secret work there. And one of the things that we aligned on early is that the primary form factor for a Galleon, these modular data centers, has to be highly ruggedized. It has to be something that can be there and withstand extreme hot, extreme cold. We've done drop testing, dropped it from large distances repeatedly. It has to really be able to withstand quite a bit of punishment because we are going to be in these very difficult environments and they need to be able to just sort of work for a long time because the people that are on the ground there are not IT people, right? They're operators. They're people that are trying to get a job done. And ultimately, I think that's the highest purpose of AI is to help people do their job faster, better in a way that has, a positive impact.
And would the locations of the galleons be, somewhat private, be hidden from most people, so it's even safer in that regard?
Well, it's safer in a couple of different ways. So one is that, and the nice thing about these galleons is not only is the location really, it's up to the customer and it's their IP, but the data stays local and it's their data and it's their models, right? And that's very different from how people have thought about AI in the past, where it's like, I'm going to do it maybe in the cloud. And it's sort of this thing that, does it really belong to me anymore? And where's my data going? And all that. It's like, no, you have total control over your data and your models. If anything leaves that site, it's because you've decided to send it back using Starlink or some other form of connectivity, but you have total control. And I think that's really also very interesting because AI is sort of rapidly becoming these companies' competitive advantage. And so why would you want to share that with your competitors? Why wouldn't you want to keep that to yourself and be able to benefit in an outsized way? And I actually think that the companies that figure that out the fastest, that figure out how to optimize their AI, not that it's all going to be at the edge, that's not going to be the case, but optimize their AI between the cloud, their own on-premise infrastructure, and then the edge, and do it in a way that they are keeping the things that are really sort of their secret sauce, the thing that makes their company special, their competitive advantage, proprietary to them, and move really fast. They're going to just dominate in the coming decades.
And I presume there's still redundancy somehow built in.
Yeah, well, that's the other way that it's highly secure, is that we have redundancy between the galleons. So each one, you can think about a galleon like a node in your own distributed private cloud. And so each one of those nodes is redundant, but then we also have rack redundancy. So there's redundancy even between the individual racks. And then just, given the team that we have, we've been highly focused on bringing security by design into every layer of the stack from day one.
And so I don't know if you've gotten to the pricing model. Clearly, you've thought about it, but is it like the upfront, to get the Galleon, maybe have a custom build for a Galleon for a certain enterprise customer, and then recurring maintenance?
Yeah, so we try to be, again, customer driven in everything, including our pricing model. Just on the security piece, the other thing that we did, and then I'll get to the pricing piece, but the security thing that's interesting that, again, shows that we're being very focused on the customer. We're working with large enterprises, and then with the government, as you said, security is really important. So we were ISO and SOC certified out of the gate when we launched out of stealth, which I don't know any other company that's done that. And I've been in this tech world for a very long time. And so that's notable, I think, and something that our team is, very focused on. The other question that you asked around pricing, there's multiple options depending on what the customer is trying to do. If they want, they can have it priced almost as edge as a service. And this is actually, I think, the model that most customers prefer because it's what they're used to with the cloud, where, effectively you're paying based on consumption. You're paying based on the amount of compute that you're consuming, the amount of GPUs that you're consuming in these locations. And people tend to like that because it means that they're not being overcharged for something that they're not using. And so we've really tried to lean into that model. Some people, though, say, hey, I already know I'm going to deploy a lot of these things for major AI projects, whether that's deploying them to, we have customers that are trying to deploy them to 30, 50 sites around the world, or I'm trying to do a lot of data processing in one location. And so I'm going to need several of these and I need to stand them up really quickly, maybe even as an alternative to building a data center, because I just can't wait that long. There's actually an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about how there's sort of this rush to do AI, and modular data centers can help kind of fill that gap because you can't build enough large data centers fast enough. And then you can also co-locate them with cheap land and cheap energy. And so if somebody wants to do that, they may just say, hey, I'm going to pay for a block of these up front, and then we give them an additional discount.
I think what's interesting about your background is that I think you were in law school, you became a lawyer, you practiced law, and then you eventually became a tech executive and now a founder. How did that all come about? Did you always have it in you to kind of want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I always was very interested in entrepreneurship. I was very interested in just building impactful companies that could change the world and that are mission driven. And, I went to law school, but I figured out pretty quickly that I didn't want to be a lawyer the rest of my life. And that's no offense to lawyers. I have lots of friends who are lawyers, that I used to work with. But what I realized as I was going through law school is that building these companies, right? Number one, what an amazing experience to have with a group of people, right? And companies are really just, groups of people aligned on a common mission. And I just thought that was such a cool thing to be able to build something from nothing to an impactful company with a group of people that you choose to team up with. And even when I was at the law firm, so I passed the bar coming out of law school, I worked at a very large law firm, and I started to immediately work with just hundreds of technology companies. And what I saw was just like almost like a series of movies. I was like watching all of these movies with like these amazing founders just kind of building their dreams around this mission with people that was set on the same thing. And I was like, I got to be a part of that. And then one of the founders, Jyoti Bansal over at AppDynamics, he was willing to take a chance on me and, was able to be part of that journey. And then I just sort of became addicted to it. And now it's like, I can't think of doing anything else. For me, it's a different path than a lot of people have had, but I always tell people it's really just like figuring out what I wanted to do and then just taking steps in that direction. Right. When I joined AppDynamics, I was like the person who reviewed the contracts for the coffee machines and things like it was very transactional type of stuff. But then I knew where I wanted to go and I kept taking on more and more and then eventually became the COO and then, grew from there.
What's the toughest part about being a founder?
I think the toughest part about being a founder is at the end of the day, you carry the weight of the company on your shoulders. And so any founder that tells you that they don't think about it constantly, probably lying to you. Like it is something that you carry with you always,
Mm-hmm.
But that's also one of the best parts of it, because when you get to see it go from sort of the seed of an idea, like Armada started as like the seed of an idea, to a real company and then work with real customers and solve real problems. And then, the mission of the company becomes real and it's happening. You get to experience that in a way that is very unique, very powerful. And so that is definitely the hardest part about it, but in some ways it's the best part about it too.
Now, as you're building the organization, how do you think about culture and what kind of culture are you trying to cultivate for the people that work at Armada?
Yeah, we're trying to really, and we've been very intentional about this from the beginning, create a mission-driven company where we are recruiting and we are developing and nurturing a culture that's aligned around that mission and then aligned around our customers. And just as like one data point, something that's pretty unique is before we even founded the company, we were working on a manifesto and we were working on describing like, why does our company exist? What's the mission of the company? And how are we going to get from point A to point B? And the values of the company. And one of those, core values is around heal the customer's pain first. Like that is the most important thing, is to help our customers. And I think by being very intentional in that way around like, we are going to build a mission-driven company. And if you don't like wake up fired up about this mission every day, you probably shouldn't come to work here, because this is what this company's all about. And these are our values and this is how we're going to operate. We were able to recruit for that. And we have, like, if we don't feel like people are aligned to the mission and the values of the company, even if they're amazing, we won't hire them. And if, it turns out that somebody sneaks in that's not aligned to that, then they won't be here very long. Like that's sort of, it's a requirement if you're going to be part of the company. And then we just really try to nurture that and just how we act. Ultimately, you never want your values to just be words on a wall or your mission to be just words on a page. It's all about what you do. And so we try to live them out, every day.
And then how did you and your co-founder come together?
Yeah, so I mentioned that, we talked about it. I used to be a lawyer. So John and I met actually at the law firm. Actually, we met at the law firm before that. When I was a summer associate in law school, I got to work with John. He was at that point a junior associate at Gunderson Detmer. And then we both ended up going to Goodwin and practicing there. John was there longer than I was. I was there for about 2.5 years. John was there long enough to become a partner, but we worked together, very closely there and just became friends. And then we stayed friends. And when I started to think about Armada, it happened to be that, John and I were having dinner with our wives and we started talking about this and we couldn't stop talking about it. And then before we knew it, we'd incorporated a company, which is, I think, talking to other entrepreneurs, a very good sign when it's like, it's so natural. Nothing was forced from just working on this. It was almost like the company just happened because we couldn't stop working on it. the company just happened together because we couldn't stop working together on it. And to me, that's like the best way to start a company.
And sorry, I might have missed this, but so did you work together as well at AppDynamics and DataRobot?
No,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
just stayed friends. We're part of an angel investor group. And so we make investments in different cool technology companies. But we worked together at the law firm, stayed friends, and then started talking about Armada and then founded the company.
Excellent. We're coming up on the tail end. I have two final questions before I ask them. What's the best insight you've received from another entrepreneur?
Ooh, that's tough because I have a lot of entrepreneur friends and they've given me a lot of good insights. I'll give you two. I think one of the things that I've taken from some of my entrepreneur friends is just like the importance of mission. And we've really tried to emphasize that at our company and build our whole company around that. And so that is one. And I truly believe if you get that right, if you get the mission of the company right, it's a massive advantage at every stage. The second thing I would say, actually, Freddie Carest, a friend of mine who's the vice chairman and co-founder and CEO at Okta, Freddie has this saying, keep the main thing the main thing. And I think that's important because when you're starting a company, there's a million things you could work on. There's a million things you could focus on. But the way that you become successful is you focus on the thing that will be kind of the backbone of your company. And after you nail that, then you do other things. And so we've really tried to keep the main thing, and not become distracted and just stay focused.
Excellent. Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Oh, I'll give you one that I haven't talked about that much, which is actually my grandfather. He was kind of like the original entrepreneur of our family. He played football at Stanford, but then he became a sort of an entrepreneur, started a company where he had a bunch of car dealerships throughout California. And he had a kind of a tough background. He was adopted and, had a pretty poor upbringing and managed to just kind of like scratch and claw his way to a very successful career. And I always like took that with me, both that number one, he was able to come from a very tough place and, create something that, hadn't existed in the world that he then, and this is the second piece of it, used to help a lot of other people. Like he was very, very generous with everything that he earned through that. And so I would say my grandfather, Jack Barnes was his name.
Excellent. A last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of JDRF, which is the leading research organization for type 1 diabetes. And I'm very passionate about that. I actually got involved in that when I was at AppDynamics. And that was something that I was sort of recruited by Mark Hawkins at Salesforce, who was later on my board at DataRobot, to get involved as the chair of the San Francisco One Walk, along with Elise Leung, who was my colleague at AppDynamics and then at DataRobot, and I was at OpenGov. And I really, through that, learned a couple of things. One is there's just a huge amount of people and families that are affected by type 1 diabetes, and you'd never know, right, until you start talking to them about it. And then the second thing is, out of all of the conditions that people can have, this is one where we're making rapid progress with technology. And what is being done now with research, but also kind of the latest technology to, for example, regulate insulin levels. Even recently, JDRF was like critical in spearheading an initiative around a drug that actually prevents the onset of diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And the whole rally cry of JDRF is to turn type 1 into type none. But the really cool thing about it is I think within a decade, it's going to happen. The way that we're advancing, the rate at which we're advancing, like it's very possible. And so, I think the potential impact there is just huge. So that's what I'm pretty passionate about.
Excellent. Well, Dan, want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much. Great talking to you.